Hello, everybody. Nelson Virgil here with ExcelMale.com. I'm very excited today. This is a very different interview that I'm used to doing in the past because this person that I'm going to be talking with is going to bring a new angle to the discussion around attraction, sex drive, marriage, relationships, especially to men and women that have optimized their hormones, obtained better libido, and yet their partner may not be responding sexually to their advances for many reasons. So I'd like to introduce Rebecca Watson. She's an author of the book, I Want Sex, She Wants Fries. Very catchy name, as you can tell. She's a marriage consultant and founder of Peak Marriage. Rebecca works with individuals and couples to increase attraction and connection in their marriages. Rebecca, for people that don't know your background, what's been your career path and what brought you to this point?
Okay, thanks for having me, Nelson. I'm really excited to be here. One thing I want to tell people is what you'll get out of this video. What I'd like to do is help you understand that you can build attraction in your marriage. A lot of people think that you can't. They think that in a long-term relationship, attraction just naturally diminishes and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's not true. You can build attraction. There are certain behaviors and activities that we know from studies build attraction. Once you engage in those behaviors, attraction grows. So if you want a partner who's totally into you, if you want a partner who wants to touch you, who initiates touch, who wants to be intimate, who, when you go to kiss them, they don't pull away, this is your video. By the end of the video, I want you to understand not only why your current efforts to attract your partner aren't working, but more importantly, I want you to understand what will work. At the end of the video, I'm going to go ahead and give you 5 specific steps that you can do immediately, the minute you get off the video, that night, the next day, that weekend, that will increase attraction in your marriage. If you will do those 5 steps, attraction will grow. I work with people every single day who are increasing attraction in their marriage. You know, we'll start with a couple that when they first start coaching, on a scale of 1 to 10, attraction is 1, 2, 3. I don't think I've ever had a 0, but attraction is very low. There's no sex, there's no intimacy. They don't want to spend time together. They're actively pulling away from each other. By the time we're done with the coaching, attraction is at 7, 8, 9. They want to be together. Connection is high. Sex goes through the roof, both quality and quantity. So it is very possible to increase attraction in marriage. You just have to know how. And what I see is that a lot of guys especially are working really hard to attract their partner. So it's not that they're not doing enough work. It's that they're putting all those efforts in the wrong areas. Once you figure out what areas you need to work on, attraction grows easily. So a lot of guys get burnt out. You know, they've worked so hard and they finally just give up. You know, they're like, I'm never going to reach that pinnacle. But I hate to see that because once you know how, it's easy to build attraction.
And how do you get involved in this field? Tell me
Okay.
what motivated you to write the book and obviously do the coaching sessions that you do with different people.
So that was kind of crazy. You know, when I first started out, I was in the corporate world. I worked in human resources. I did training and development, mediation, arbitration, and I absolutely loved my work. I was part of a team and we had a blast. Around that same time, I met my husband. We dated for a while, got married. And then over the course of the next 10 years, we had 5 children together. So life was great. You know, long-term marriage, 5 gorgeous children. Life was good until it wasn't. About 8 or 9 years ago, my marriage started going south. And I didn't understand what was going on. My husband lost interest in everything, including me. He, his energy tanked, his libido tanked. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't know, you know, is it me? Is he just not attracted to me anymore? You know, I kind of turned myself inside out trying to become more attracted to him. Nothing worked. And it was really heartbreaking. So then I thought, well, maybe this is just how marriage is. Maybe after, 12 years of marriage, attraction is going to diminish and there's nothing you can do about it. But I knew that wasn't right because I grew up in a family where my parents were wildly attracted to each other. You know, they've been married 60 years now. My dad's in his 80s. Yeah. My dad's in his 80s, and they are still physically attracted to each other. They still have a physical relationship. So that was my model growing up. That's what I thought was normal. So my marriage we were just roommates, right? I mean, we went to bed at different times. We didn't touch each other. We didn't kiss. There was nothing there. I just knew that wasn't right. I didn't know how to fix it. And we didn't know it at the time. We would find this out much, much later. But it was actually low testosterone. My husband's testosterone levels had tanked. But at the time, I didn't know anything about testosterone. We had no clue what was going on. So, like everyone else, when you have a problem, you go to the internet and you start looking for answers. And I went through, oh my gosh, so many websites. And I finally stumbled across this website of a guy who called himself a marriage coach. Now, back then, I didn't even know, I don't think I had ever heard the term marriage coach, and I don't think I knew what it was. I assumed it was like a marriage counselor or therapist, which I wasn't thrilled with. You know, I had seen so many couples who had, they had done years of marriage counseling, and it didn't seem like it did anything. They, a ton of time and money with no results, which I knew I didn't want to go down that path. But this guy was different. He seemed like he knew what he was talking about. So I took a chance. I reached out to him, and really it was the best thing I've ever done. He is the reason that my marriage is still together 10 years later, 8 or 9 years later. So he worked with us. He helped us get back on the path. He helped us get our marriage back together. And around the same time, also, we found doctors who could help us with the testosterone issue. So the combination of those two things kept my marriage together. So once my marriage calmed down and we were back on track, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help couples avoid what we had gone through, and also, get couples in a marriage where they not only survived, but they thrived. So from that point, it was just a matter of taking that corporate experience and directing it toward individual couples.
Yeah, well, good. That there's nothing better than somebody that comes from, a background of their own experience,
Pain,
and
yes.
pain and, trouble.
Yeah.
And really is about saving trouble and time for others,
Mm-hmm.
That's where I've done the work I've done. In the book. So tell us a little bit about the book and, the title. How do you come up with the title
Okay.
and what it contains? Because I really want some of the guys that read my stuff and watch my videos that are struggling. They're struggling with
Yeah,
their relationships, especially after getting on testosterone. How to deal
exactly.
with how to get the skills, because it is a skill to
Yeah,
reactivate attraction in a long-term relationship, and that's
it
actually.
is. It's almost, attraction is basically almost a formula. I mean, not quite. It's not quite a formula, but almost, right? So I never dreamed I would ever write a book. I didn't want to write a book. But the guy that was training me in his coaching model told me, he said, you have to have a book, you have to have a website, or you can't work with me. So I was like, oh, I don't know how to write a book, but hey, the internet, right? So I just went in, and the title is controversial because it's out there, right? It's not shy. And believe it or not, before I started this whole coaching, I was shy. Like, I never thought I'd be talking. My dad has read my book, which, oh my gosh, is somewhat, right? It's a little bit mortifying. But so I wanted a title that reflected, there's a lot of books out there about testosterone, but mostly they're clinical. They're written by doctors, very, very good, knowledgeable people. But I wanted more like the older sister, right? That you could ask anything. So I wanted the title to reflect that. And a lot of people said, oh, Rebecca, that title, no, that's not,
I think
I
it's
don't
great.
know. It felt right to me. And yeah, so I threw it out there. Now, interestingly enough, the book is mostly directed toward women, right? I want sex, he wants fries. But it turns out that there's more men who have read it than women, which is ironic, right? My next book will be directed more toward men and specifically more about attraction. Although there will be some stuff about hormones and testosterone in there as well, because, that's all interconnected. If you don't have the hormones to support libido, attraction doesn't matter. And that's true for men and women, right? So that's how the book came to be.
So you don't think there's an irreversible point in a relationship, where attraction completely dies, when attraction was actually there before. And let's say, everybody has their hormones optimized by this time, because obviously that's a factor that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, with no libido, although I think some people may have attraction with no libido. I mean,
Yeah,
that's something else we can discuss later. I mean, whether or not sex is overrated in long-term relationships, or just, intimacy beyond sex.
right.
But let's assume that, yeah, that a male and a female have been together for over 20 years, have had kids, have had a busy life. They used to have sex a lot, maybe once, twice, three times a week. Now they're basically hardly having any or
Celibate,
not.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they're still obviously monogamous. Some people may stray away when the
right.
attraction is gone, or give up, or get divorced. But a lot of people have commitments. They say,
Yeah.
I will
A lot of
commit, I
people
will,
just stay and suffer.
and stay and suffer. And they don't talk
Yeah,
to anybody. That's the worst. Not only
because it's
women,
so
but men. It's
embarrassing. Yeah.
embarrassing. And most people around you may be lying about how much sex they're having.
Yeah,
Everybody's always
yeah.
boasting, especially in the male side of the story. So you don't think there is, obviously, we're talking about couples that don't have issues beyond just intimacy, but sometimes you have financial issues,
Mhm.
disagreements in your political beliefs, or your
Raising
raising
children. Yeah.
children. There are many stressors to a relationship, and there are lots of tests that are imposed on people's attraction to each other. So
Mhm.
can we just get a little bit into that, into what the formula is? I hate to call it that, but I think it's
Yeah,
a good,
it's
good
kind of
term.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's three love systems. They're separate, but they're connected. This is a missing piece of the puzzle. This is what marriage counseling doesn't touch. So three separate but connected love systems. One is just general health and hormones. One is connection, which is powered by oxytocin. That's that bonding hormone that makes you feel warm and fuzzy with each other. And the other one is attraction, which is powered by dopamine. Dopamine is the reward neurotransmitter, right? The thing that makes us feel excited. Well, let's assume that general health and hormones is okay, because that's kind of that's a whole ball of wax on its own.
Yeah.
But let's assume, like for your guys, they fixed that part. Well, then you've got attraction and connection are the other two love systems. Marriage counseling only focuses on connection. That's it. And connection is important. It's not unimportant. But if you focus all your efforts on that, you become super good friends and really good roommates, but you don't want to jump in bed together. So that's where you have to hit the attraction part. And what powers attraction is completely different than what powers connection. So all the advice that guys get, do more chores, empty the dishwasher, bring her flowers, give her compliments. No,
No.
it's really good for connection, but it's really bad for attraction.
Huh.
And the guys I work with, they've got that part covered, right? They're doing all that. They are knocking themselves out. Like I get guys on my website leave comments. I do everything. I do the dishes. I take the kids. I walk the dogs. And I'm like, stop. What you've got to do is stop doing all that, because she does not respect you.
Mm,
You're doing all that because you're trying to get sex. Well, that makes sex transactional.
mm.
She doesn't respect that, and she can't ever be attracted to you in that case. So here's the secret, and this is maybe not politically correct, but it's true. Women are attracted to strength.
Do.
It's that simple. Strength, all types of strength. Physical strength, obviously, just sheer muscle. Intellectual strength, intelligence, the ability to make decisions. Social strength, guys who have their own life, who have their own hobbies, who are interesting, right? Financial strength. Now, this is not popular, but it is true. Financial strength, women are attracted to guys who are financially secure. That is the truth of it. But the most important kind of strength, and this is where most of the guys I work with, this is where they languish, strength of will, the ability to stand up to their wife. Yeah.
Mm.
So there's kind of this primal thing with women that we want a guy who will protect and provide. So if you can't stand up to your wife, how are you ever going to stand up for her?
There you go.
Every time you give in to her, it makes her insecure.
Mm.
It makes her feel like you cannot protect her, and attraction tanks.
But there's a fine
That's,
line, right? There's a fine line.
yeah.
It's like a power struggle, right? That
Uh,
happens. I went through, I'm in a long-term relationship and we went through
yeah.
counseling many years ago. And they say you go through the romantic phase where you're having sex, you're like, can't have enough of each other, you know?
Mhm.
And then you go through the power struggle phase where people are finding their boundaries, their, personalities
Mhm.
start showing up, especially when you move in together. That's what my mom
Yeah.
says. You love somebody. Well, move in together first and see if you really love that person after you. But yeah, that fine line between a man accepting their power, their rights, and a woman feeling threatened by that, you know,
Yeah.
there's this term toxic masculinity, which is showing up everywhere. And I really don't want to get into the politics of
Yeah.
that because I'm really not an expert on the subject. But yeah, tell us a little bit how does a man stand up for himself,
Without being a
is a
jerk.
good provider without being a jerk and without
Yeah.
and while respecting, the person's
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah.
All right. So if you ask a woman, do you want a guy who dominates you and who doesn't give you any choices and who acts like a jerk? Well, no. She's going to say no, and she doesn't. But if you ask her, do you want a guy who's a strong leader, who can make decisions, who's confident, who has high energy, and has a life that is really interesting? Oh, yeah. Right? So that's that difference, right? You can be a strong leader without being a jerk. And this is not only true with just men and women, it's true with every relationship you have. So in any relationship, even two friends, say, if you have a friend and they always show up late, they don't respect your time, and you put up with that,
Mm.
that lowers your standing in their eyes. You've got to set reasonable boundaries with that person. It's true with a boss. It's true with an employee you supervise. It's true with your kids, with your sister, with your mom. It's true of everyone. We've got to set reasonable boundaries. Now, in a marriage, that's what builds respect. And so that's what builds attraction. So, no, a guy can't be a jerk, but that's not typically what I see. I see guys who have gone all the way to the other side, right? Their wife is just walking all over them. And who knows, maybe that's because society has told him he can't set reasonable boundaries. Maybe his mom did, maybe his dad did, maybe because he wants sex from his wife, so he has to tippy toe, right? So, whoops, did that just click? So yeah, you can't be a jerk, but you do have to set boundaries, and women respect that and they're attracted to that.
That's very interesting.
I know it's a new thought, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The fine line between being a good leader, setting your boundaries,
Mhm.
or being considered a jerk and not getting the sex you want.
Yeah.
Because so what do you tell a man uh, what how to get to a point where sex doesn't feel transactional,
Mm.
meaning not like a trade, like I give you this and you give me that, or for women not to withhold sex as a punishment.
Mm. All right. So I have guys all the time who say, well, no, attraction should be natural. If she loved me, she'd want sex with me. But I mean, look around. That's not true, right? What should be is different than what is. So, okay, so think about a lot of things aren't natural, right? We live in a world where a lot of guys have low testosterone, but they shouldn't have low testosterone. They have basically healthy lifestyles. They don't have a lot of risk factors. They're younger and younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they do have low testosterone because we live in this world that is really toxic
Mm-hmm.
to masculinity, I think, and to testosterone and hormones in general. Or going to the gym. I mean, that's not natural, right? My dad, blue collar guy, right? He was an iron worker. His job was very physical. So he looks around at all these guys who go to a gym to get fit and he just shakes his head and he doesn't get it. But for most guys, they're in a sedentary office job. They're sitting 12, 14 hours a day with a long commute. Going to the gym is the only way. So we live in an unnatural world. It's the same thing with attraction. It used to be the way people lived when we were in more primal lifestyles. There were a lot of opportunities to build attraction naturally, right? You kill the mountain lion, you kill the bear, and it turns out women are really attracted to that kind of strength. But we don't live in that society anymore. So you have to find the opportunities to build attraction in a way that maybe doesn't seem natural, but we're compensating for a different type of lifestyle now.
So what kind of tips? Let's go through like
Okay.
a laundry list of things you can do today, starting
Okay,
tonight,
let's start.
without overwhelming. Because I think, like everything in life, even behavioral change is a habit forming kind of system.
Mm-hmm.
And I see guys that are trying to do too much at this, at once. And they get
Yeah.
discouraged, obviously, because there is so much to do. When I usually counsel about testosterone, exercise, nutrition, and some men just tend to,
Yeah,
have all these
it's
goals at once.
overwhelming.
It's
Right.
overwhelming. So I tell them one thing at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
let's go through a few of those
Okay.
items.
So if you're going to focus, I'll give you 4 specific steps. And if you will do these 4 things, you will see attraction start to grow. Now, it's not all you'll do, but this is a good starting point. Okay. So the first one, get to a gym, build muscle. It's that simple. You don't have to be Arnold, but you do have to have muscles. Women will say that they're not attracted to muscles, but it's not true. So we know from studies, women like muscles. Now, they don't necessarily like a guy who looks like he spends every minute in the gym,
Mhm.
but women are attracted to muscles. So if you're a guy and you're running, 5K marathons all the time, stop. Stop doing that.
Mhm.
Go to a gym and start working your muscles. And it's not enough to work out at home. You've got to get to a gym because
Yeah.
you need, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
You need
Oh
that
yeah,
competition
motivation.
with other guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need the motivation to see everybody else like, wow, that guy's probably 20 years older than me, and look at him,
And look at him.
yeah, I wouldn't be able to have bought a few pieces of equipment to try at home, and to sell them on Craigslist after a
Yeah.
while because I don't use them. Besides,
Right.
I tell guys too, you need me time, and going to the
Mm-hmm.
gym is one of a few occasions that you actually get to be by yourself doing things for yourself.
You've got to prioritize
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
These guys, they live for their wife and their children, and it sounds good in theory, but it's not good. And if you look traditionally throughout history, this is not how men lived. Men have always been with men until now, where we want to make your wife your best friend. That doesn't work. She can be your best friend or your lover. She cannot be both. Right? Okay, so get to the gym. And if you're intimidated, which a lot of guys are, if you've never been to a gym before, it's intimidating. Hire a personal trainer for at least a couple of sessions. That in and of itself can maybe get you over that hump. I had a client, I'm still coaching as a matter of fact, but his wife went to a gym, and she went to a gym with a lot of guys who were built. And he was a runner. And I was like, I'm going to use a different name, but I was like, John, you've got to start working out. He's like, oh no, I'm really physically fit. I was like, it doesn't matter. So he stopped by his wife's gym one night, and she was wearing a very tight, revealing outfit, and she was flirting wildly with these guys. I was like, dude, you've got to work out. So eventually, now it took him a long time. That was a huge stumbling block for him. Intellectual strength was easy for him, but physical strength was intimidating. So you just have to work them through that, just little tiny baby steps. But anyway, okay, so recommendation number 1, get to a gym, build muscle. Number 2, which you just touched on, take time for yourself and go do interesting things. Think about when you were first dating, your partner. You had a life. You didn't spend every minute with her. You did not orbit her. I have guys who orbit their wife like she's the earth and he's the moon, right? And he's just constantly needy, circling her all the time. It kills mystery, right? Think about James Bond. If he were texting his girlfriend every 3 seconds, oh, hey, gonna go blow this up, gonna go. No, he's interesting because he goes off and he does his own thing. There's some mystery to him. If she knows what you're doing 24/7, you're boring to her. So stop texting her so much. Stop giving her so much compliments. Go do your own thing. And you need a guy friend. You need a group of guys that have fun together. It doesn't matter what kind of fun, a soccer team or a gym, or I got guys who are part of all sorts of different things. I've got one guy who is part of a band. They do, unpaid performances. Doesn't matter what you do. Prioritize yourself. You've got to put on your own oxygen mask first. before, and yeah, you want to be a good dad, you want to be a good husband, but it starts with having a life you enjoy.
That's
So
such a
that's,
good point. That's such a good
yeah,
point. You know what I'm finding out, and I've read some research on the subject. Once a man gets married, they actually start losing friends from
yeah,
their younger years. And after a few years, most men have no a single friend they can talk to if they're desperate, or like
I know.
somebody, my mom used to say, somebody that you can call when you want to cry, you know?
Well, and what
Or
happens is that
yeah.
they cry to their wife, which, and I hate to say this, it sounds harsh. You cannot share your always with your wife. You cannot do it because you might get her sympathy, but she can either be your mother and give you sympathy or she could be your lover. She cannot be both. You've got to pick.
So, and this is an enlightened conversation. I have
Yeah,
to say, you
it's
definitely say some
harsh, I
things that
know.
actually, no, I think it's clear. But coming from you, you're a woman. You've gone through
Mhm.
this. It's a little different than if somebody
Yeah,
like me said it, for instance.
yeah.
So keep going. I'm sorry. I keep
Yeah,
interrupting.
and I think I can get away with saying it because I am female. Whereas maybe if a guy says this, he comes across as being a chauvinist or whatever.
Yeah.
But I grew up with parents who lived this. My dad had four brothers, and he was close to them. He did not use my mom as a emotional support. He would never have thought about doing that. And if any of us look at our dads or our granddads, think about that generation, that strong generation. No, their wives were not their friends, and honestly, they got a lot better sex than any guys I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds harsh, but it's true. Okay, so go do interesting things. Stop orbiting her. On that same level, stop texting her so often and stop complimenting her. She does not want you to put her on a pedestal. If you put her on a pedestal, she has no choice except to look down on you.
This is so opposite from what
I
we usually
know.
hear, which
I
is good
know.
because, it makes you
Yeah.
think. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes guys are blown away. I'm like, well, you've done it the other way. How's it working for you? You know? Okay. So, recommendation number 3, women are attracted to strong leaders. And again, not jerks, but guys who can make a decision. And oh my gosh, every generation, every younger generation gets worse at making decisions, right? So when she says, sweetheart, what should we have for dinner? Do not do that thing where you say, oh, I don't care, honey, whatever you want. No, give her a decision. It doesn't matter what the decision is. Hey, I'll grill burgers. Or, hey, order pizza. Let's go out for Mexican. It doesn't matter what the choice is. Just make a decision. Same thing on Saturday. Have a plan for the weekend. So it can be as simple as saying, hey, you take daughter to practice and I'm going to go grab some groceries. Or let's get the kids out and rake the yard and then we'll clean the basement. It's not being a jerk. And it's not like you're the president of the US and you're deciding who to bomb, right? Tiny decisions, but it makes a huge difference. And I tell you what, Nelson, I've seen guys who do this for, say, a week. They just start, I tell them, do 3 leadership, what we call leadership moments a day, just 3. By the end of the week, their wife is more attracted to them. It really is, it's that simple.
it makes sense. I mean, it's opposite of what you hear. I mean,
I
you
know.
keep hearing that you need to compliment them a lot. You know, but the leadership stuff is definitely new information for me to hear.
Mm.
Hold on, I think we're having some. Okay, we're back online somehow. It was freezing. Go
Oh,
ahead.
it's
Sorry.
crazy. Yeah. Well, and the other part of that is when you want her to do something, ask her. I have so many guys, one guy I'm thinking in particular, that every suggestion he would give, he would kind of couch in the form of a joke, right? If he didn't want her to do something, he would kind of jokingly complain in a kind of a passive aggressive way, right?
Mm,
Stop doing that. If you want her to do something, ask her bluntly, clearly. She will respect it. When you think about bosses you've respected, right? Do you respect the guy who's waffly, who can't make a decision? Or do you respect that boss who has a plan, who comes into a meeting with a plan?
yeah, yeah. Or
Right?
there's some people that in a couple, usually, it could be a female or male. I don't want to be gender specific. They're expecting the other person to read their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you love me, you should know what I feel and why.
Yeah.
And that definitely
It doesn't work.
is
Yeah.
yeah, it's passive aggressive
Yeah.
too.
It's really passive aggressive.
Excuse me.
All right. So that's 3. Let's see, 4. Okay. This is one of the hardest ones, but it is the area where you'll get the most traction. You got to stand your ground. You got to stop giving in to her. If you have a marriage with no conflict, you have a marriage with no attraction.
Say that again because I want to hear it more than once.
Okay. If you have a marriage with no conflict, you all never argue, you have a marriage with no attraction. Because if you have a marriage with no conflict, it means one of you is giving in all the time. Because living with someone creates conflict. You cannot live with someone without some level of conflict. And when you say, the biggest red flag for me when I first do a call with someone, if he says, oh yeah, no, we get along great, we never have any conflict, I'm like, okay, that means one of you, and it's usually the guy, is giving in to whatever she wants. So this is the hardest thing for guys. You've got to stand your ground. I'll give you an example. This happened just 2 days ago. Guy I worked with. He had gone out with his buddies for a night out, right? And his girlfriend was not happy with him. So it was about 11 o'clock at night. He had gotten home. She was texting him, but obviously with an attitude. She was just spoiling for a fight. And so he engaged for a little while. He called her. He could tell she just wanted an argument. And so he's like, look, it's 11. I'm tired. I've got to work tomorrow. I'm not doing this right now. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And he hung up. At which point she started texting, oh, but can I come over? I want to spend the night. I want to be with you. He was like, just one, no. That's all he said. So the next day is, and it was hard for him because you're taught not to do that, right? You're taught to never go to bed when you're angry. Well, that's ridiculous. Sometimes you go to bed when you're angry, as long as you stand your ground. So at first she was angry with him, but by the next day, she was all over him. She was texting him constantly. She was conciliatory. She wanted to come over and she wanted to cuddle and snuggle. So it's scary. Like I work with guys and they are literally afraid to stand their ground with their wife. But you only have to do it a couple times. And here's my challenge to you. Do this a couple times and collect data points. So with the coaching, I'm very metric oriented. We measure everything because what doesn't get measured doesn't get done, right? You've got to know what's working so that you know where to put your efforts. So we measure marital satisfaction, we measure energy, we measure connection, attraction, we measure sex, quality, quantity, we measure everything. And that way we know what's working and we track it, on a graph. So that way we know what's working and what's not. So here's my challenge. Stand up to your wife or your partner the next time conflict comes around. She will be angry. I promise you, she'll be angry in the moment. But then I want you to collect data points the next day, next couple days, and see if she isn't more attracted. Because I promise you, she will be more attracted.
How do you do that? Because I think a lot of us, and I have in past relationships, have developed codependency, where this drama, this standing on your ground and then not, and then giving in, becomes this sick cycle of unhappiness. Can we talk a little bit about that? I know the word codependency is overused a lot.
Well, okay, it's a red flag. So when you see a couple who has this constant cycle where it flares, they have argument, they have drama, then they feel closer, right?
And they have great sex because it's makeup
Great
sex.
sex. Okay, what that is dopamine. All right, so dopamine, remember, is a reward neurotransmitter. Some people call it the pleasure neurotransmitter, but that's not accurate. It's actually the novelty neurotransmitter. Everything that's novel that we do causes our body to produce dopamine. And then dopamine is its own reward. So when you jump out of planes, when you go on roller coasters, when you go to a new restaurant, that's all dopamine. So arguments, surprisingly enough, create dopamine. They cause our bodies to produce dopamine. So for couples who are not doing anything fun together, they never have dopamine activities together, you see a lot of that pattern. They argue, they make up, they argue. They're getting that dopamine, but it's in a very counterproductive way.
Well, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So they're actually getting it from non-healthy sources.
Yeah.
They're creating it on their own drama.
And the other thing is, depending on your personality type, some personality types actually thrive with drama and conflict. There's a personality test that I use called the Enneagram system. And certain people like that drama, they actually get energy from it. But other Enneagram types, they're drained by conflict. So if you're the type that my son, for my adult son, is drained by conflict, his girlfriend is energized by conflict. So he's had to learn to set boundaries with her, because if he doesn't, he will be drained constantly. So if you have a partner who keeps kicking in conflict, what I call fights about nothing, if you have lots of fights about nothing, then that tells you you don't have enough dopamine in your marriage. So now it takes energy. This is where the testosterone, the general health, the energy component is so important, because if you're low energy, but you still want dopamine, arguing is a really easy way to do it. Yeah. And that's the same thing for porn. Porn is perfect because it's a ton of dopamine, but it's a low energy. Uh, you know, surfing on the internet, Facebook, all of those types of things give you tons of dopamine for very low energy. So you got to shore up your energy, your health, your hormones. And that way you go and do things that are actually fun, right? As a couple, you start engaging in fun things. You get your dopamine that way. And then you watch those arguments just dwindle away.
Good point. Good. And when do you say enough is enough? This is not working. I'm out.
Mm.
And some people stay together because of the kids, because financial, issues. Sometimes it's, who's going to pay for the house, who's going to take the house.
Right.
You're going to take everything I own. And I've seen that people are trapped by circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, whoever you're coaching is been trying. I don't know how long it takes for people to have endpoints, because some coaches and counselors tend to keep people, on their
Forever.
forever, and usually that's not very healthy. That's why I tend not to seek counseling anymore. I used
Yeah.
to, but
That's what I
because
tell my
their business
clients.
was to keep me coming
Yes,
back. It's
because
like
there's a profit motive.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when does somebody say, this is, I'm
It's
still have a
enough.
few years left, and I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to please this person or trying to get sex from this person, when in
Mm-hmm.
fact is, and what happens sometimes, people start straying and seeing people on their side, especially now. I have to
Yeah.
say, I'm an old timer. I'm 60. We didn't have the internet back in my days when we're looking for dates, and
Mm-hmm.
having the internet now with all the apps and the porn.
Yeah.
I just feel bad for people that are starting from zero with a relationship, the
Because
young
there's
person.
so much temptation
Too
out
much
there.
more
Yeah.
dopamine out
Yeah.
there,
Oh,
the
yeah.
sources of dopamine. So let's talk. I know it's kind of a vague question, but
Yeah. Okay. So almost always you can build attraction in a marriage, but there are a couple times I'm going to be honest, I've been stymied. There are a couple times where I've actually said to a couple, I can't help you. Um, Specific instances. Okay, this is a tricky situation. If there was never attraction in the beginning, if she was never attracted to you in the beginning, sometimes we can fix that by changing behavior, but there are times where I can't. Another situation is when the woman makes considerably more income than the man, has a lot more career status, a lot more career power. That is a very difficult situation. Not so much because she can't be attracted to him, because he can bolster himself in other areas, but because he has a hard time respecting himself if he's with a woman who makes that much more than he does. That's a tricky situation. Um, if you have a partner who simply won't try, it does take two. So what we have to do is work on, so for example, I'm coaching a guy whose wife really needs help from a health standpoint. Her energy is extremely low. My guess is her thyroid is wonky, and she probably needs a little more testosterone, and my guess is her estrogen is a little bit dominant. Anyway, so she is resistant to going to the doctor, which a lot of partners are. And it can be the man, it can be the woman. What you have to work on is getting the leverage in that marriage to make an ultimatum. And that's what I had to do ultimately with my husband. I had to get the leverage to say, look, I love you, but I don't need you. It is a matter of either the doctor or the lawyer. And I was serious. Yeah.
That's a good ultimatum, definitely.
Well, my husband put a forward, he put a, what you call a forward in my book. He wrote a little note in my book for people who were reading it and said, the only thing that finally, because he is stubborn. Oh my gosh, the man is stubborn. So he was just determined he was not going to get to a doctor. And there was nothing I could do to get him there. And he says in the book, it was finally when she said, I can't live like this. I'm too young. I'm not going to live like this the rest of my life. Either doctors or lawyers. And now we try to, we try not to get to that point. We try to get the leverage so you can do that in a more gentle way, because there is a price that's involved with putting that kind of ultimatum out there. Usually you can fix it before you have to get to the ultimatum point, but there have been a few times you do have to get to that point. Usually it's not necessary, especially if you are the guy trying to attract your wife. Women tend to be responsive to men. So typically guys don't have to go all the way to the wall. Women, different story. If I am coaching a woman, a lot of times she's got to go all the way to that ultimatum to get her husband to a doctor.
Good point.
Nah.
So tell people how to buy your book, how to get a hold of you, what the process is like.
Okay. So I've got a website called peakmarriage.com, P-E-A-K, marriage, peak meaning the top or the pinnacle. My book is called I Want Sex, He Wants Fries. It's on Amazon. You can look it up by my name or by the title of the book. It's also on my website. And coaching, easy enough. There's a contact form. You send me an email. We talk about what's going on, whether I think I can help you, and then we set up a 1-hour call.
Well, I really appreciate your enlightening comments. I have to say, I've learned a few things just by doing this interview. And I hope I know actually a bunch of my guys, because I've coached a lot of people through my 30 years, would actually get a lot out of this interview and a lot out of probably using your services, because there are many things that they're being told and been reading online about techniques to increase attraction, which are completely opposite to what you said.
I know.
And I'm not saying, I actually liked your approach, because I think it's not very politically correct sometimes to hear it.
I know.
But when you hear it, it's true, because it resonates.
That's the word I was just thinking. Like if you've watched this video and it resonates with you, and here's the deal. For some guys, it resonates immediately. And those are the guys who are ready to take action. Things that are politically correct are not always optimal.
That's true. That's true. We're dealing with that right now as we speak.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Rebecca. And hopefully we'll do another one in the future.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get a few comments from this video. So we'll be able to cover all the topics depending on what kind of input we get from the guys and ladies that watch this video. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you taking the time, and talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye.